Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I wanted to give you guys a bit more of an update about the double strike champion I've been playing for, well, since the start of Incursion, and it's basically a pre-endgame update since I'm running through tier 10, 11, 12 maps and temples, and steamrolling all the content up to this point. Not yet at the highest tier maps, just have not gotten there, but I'm confident that it should be okay on the fairly crap amount of gear I'm on at the moment, but I do know for a fact this will scale pretty damn crazily into the end game, similar to the Blade Flurry and Reeve champion. But I just wanted to give a few more updates as to what I've done for the character, what kind of things you're taking, and how to deal with a champion. This little clip here is me going through a Poorjoys, and it does face roll quite potently without, any real damage taken, because the champion, I think, is the perfect blend of offense and defense as a ascendancy class. So a lot of people ask if they should go Jug or Slayer or whatever else, and honestly I really do feel that champion has the best offense and then defense. If you do something like a Jug, you're basically going to be pigeonholed into using an Abyssus just to maintain a decent level of DPS. I feel if you go something like Slayer or Gladiator, I don't think you'll have the same level of endgame DPS, but you will definitely have some other nifty perks, and I think they're built a little bit more for non-crit builds, whereas crit, given that champion just ignores all accuracy requirements and lets you get a much higher crit rate than other classes, ends up being the best choice, I feel. And you should be able to notice through these clearing clips that I have some sort of bleed explosions now that is coming from the hemophilia gloves. So when bleeding enemies die, they do have a strong chance of exploding and doing some sort of damage to other enemies. That does help your clear speed a little bit. I don't think they're strictly necessary, but I definitely think they're nice enough in this build to actually use, because I only picked them up like 10 levels ago, but I do think my clear speed has felt just a little bit better ever since I got them. So it does simulate a Gladiator, not quite as strong as the Gladiator explosions, but still simulates it a bit. And you can also see I'm now running Arctic Armor, Herald of Ash, and a Vulnerability Blasphemy as opposed to a Hatred. Now the reason for that is basically just so I can have slightly better bleed chance against enemies to get my bleed bonus damage happening immediately, and physical damage is just stronger than cold, for a lot of things, because things do get resisted to cold, and I don't really have any penetration there yet. So until I'm actually stacking a bit more elemental damage, like from a Shaper stat stick, then I won't really bother running Hatred, and I'm going to stick to this Blasphemy setup, though the end game certainly could end up involving Hatred and Herald of Ash, like my previous one, because you end up having a decent amount of elemental damage. You can then start stacking elemental damage to attack skills modifier as well, getting quite a bit more damage, and at that point I might jump into Herald of Ice instead of Herald of Ash even, and get the shattering explosions happening that way instead of Herald of Ash and instead of Hemophilia Gloves. There are a few endgame options, and you can see here throughout these next few clips that the damage of the Val Double Strike, aka the boys, is completely insane. So before every boss fight, if you have 2 stacks of your Val Double Strike, you can jump on in there with those pre-fired, and they are going to just tear things in your asshole. It's kind of the dumbest damage I've ever seen, because most of these clips, they have my main setup having Ancestral Call and Melee Splash, so for the most part it's basically 2 to 3 linked damage, because Ancestral Call actually nerfs your damage, Melee Splash doesn't count as a gem link for single target at all, and then I've only got like 2 damage skills left there, or damage supports left, and you can see what happens when I don't have any Val Double Strikes with that same level of damage against that little bit there. It gets a lot worse. So when we do want to go pure single target, you swap out Ancestral Call, you swap out Melee Splash, and you go really ham on single target, which is something that has not been even close to necessary up to this point. I've just been using the AoE 5 link, and it's been more than enough, because Val Double Strike is completely nutty, and so is Double Strike with the physical damage that you get from hitting bleeding enemies. It's still worth roughly the same as my current foil. It's just insane, and it's close to doubling my damage for single target if something is bleeding. So the gear is still pretty basic, and that does bring me to the point of lacerate. I have been leveling and trying out lacerate every so often, and it just can't can't compete with double strike on this lower end because the pure flat fizz you get from hitting bleeding enemies with double strike really carries your lower end gear quite profusely, something that lacerate just cannot compete with until higher levels of gear, at which point maybe you'll end up getting faster clear speed, but I just don't see it being at all worth it right now, and I think double strike for this build is currently the way to go. Maybe some Reeve, maybe some Blade Flare if you're still into that thing, or plenty of other skills, but as a one-for-one comparison, lacerate and double strike, there really isn't a comparison. But there are still a few clerical issues I think I need to take care of for the champion, since a lot of the information about my character is now split amongst quite a few videos, so I'll try and give it a bit of a wrap-up and more or less a mini build guide. So it is currently now level 90 champion, almost 91. It's been a very smooth experience all the way through with leveling and damage and all that. And initially I did say that grabbing Adrenaline first is what I would do, and I did grab it first as my champion node, the first thing to do, but I didn't really need the damage because Double Strike held up all by itself, so I ended up unspecking it and going into Conqueror first, simply so that I could get Worthy Foe as my first real ascendancy during the Cruel Lab, and then I got the Fortify node, and then lastly I got Adrenaline. So this doesn't really benefit me at all because I have way too much damage for the most part, and I'm only going to be using it on boss fights. And the way you trigger Adrenaline in this setup, the fastest and best way is to attach Blood Magic to a Blasphemy and then a Curse. You could attach Blood Magic to, let's say, a Purity and save a Gem Link, but casting an Aura seems to be a lot slower than casting a Blasphemy Curse. So you pop your Blasphemy, you come out, and you maybe hit a Life Flask. You can get a low life flask that says heals to full when low life, but this one's fine for now. Maybe I'll swap into it eventually, and you get a shitload of damage, and it lasts for 20 seconds. So once that goes off, if you want to re-trigger it, you have to then get back onto low life, for example, like that. Back on low life, get another 20 seconds. Nothing's going to last long enough for that to matter. But yes, that is the last ascendancy I'm taking at this stage because I have more than enough damage in Double Strike. But otherwise, yep, I took Worthy Foe as my first 4 points. You can easily justify the Fortify node if you want a smoother leveling experience. Just attach Fortify to your Leap Slam or Whirling Blades, and you'll be just about immortal with all of that extra armor and evasion. But I personally don't really feel that need on softcore and the way I was playing my character. So Worthy Foe gives you, all of the accuracy in the world, so you become 100% chance to hit as soon as you hit something, and 20% increased damage. So it is a huge damage gain and is very noticeable when you actually get it after Cruel Lab. So like I mentioned as well, when I first started leveling, I went down and then straight away over to the left side and started to fill out some of the life and the damage as soon as I could. And then over this side a little bit just so I can get some dexterity. But primarily you don't really go to this side until you need your crit nodes and your dexterity, and try and postpone that because this side has a lot more of the flat damage nodes you want that get things going early on. So your initial 4-link will be Double Strike. Try and get a Vile Double Strike as early as possible because it helps a lot. Then Melee Splash and Ancestral Call, and then lastly you grab a Chance to Bleed as part of your 4-link. There it is there. So your 4-link, Chance to Bleed, Ancestral Call, Melee Splash, and Double Strike with Vile Double Strike will carry you up until quite a late part of the game. As soon as you can get Hemophilias or these bleed nodes, you can drop your Chance to Bleed and start using Maim, Melee Physical, something like that, or even Ruthless. And currently this is my 5-link incorporating Melee Fizz and Maim. My 6th link is probably the Ruthless. Then you can start incorporating damage on full life, crit strikes, Chance to Bleed, whatever else you think is necessary. And I was using a Princess Sword in the offhand at 2 level for a very long time. Currently I'm using a Prismatic Eclipse. It gives me 36 attack speed with the 3 greens, a bit of a block chance as well. It's going to be a lot worse than a Shaper stat stick in the end, but at this stage it costs like 1 alch, and I like it more than a Princess because it just gives me a lot of attack speed, makes this build feel a lot smoother, and it's pretty cheap and accessible. Once you can get a Shaper stat stick with the added damage to lightning, fire, cold, that sort of shit, that's when you replace this sort of thing, and that's when you can start building a bit more into elemental as well and start running your hatred. So aside that, I did get a Lion's Roar Flask a few levels ago as well. It is a pretty large amount of extra damage, but until you have a good amount of damage, the knockback when you press it is going to feel really terrible, because if you hit pretty weak and you press this, you're knocking shit back all over the place. If you have good damage and you press this, things die before they get too out of control for the knockback. So be careful when you get a Lion's Roar that it may be way too annoying to use if you have shitty damage to begin with. And beside that, I also wanted to mention that Leech. People ask a lot about Leech in this build. Where do you get your mana? Where do you get your Fizz Leech? Currently, Mana Leech, primarily you should be getting it on a ring or an amulet, but until then I run a mana flask, and then I, at around level 50 or 60, grab one mana leech node over here. That should take care of all of your mana leech until you can get some on your jewelry. Then you unspec it, and over here I have some fizz mana leech on my ring. As far as life leech is concerned, I get some from Itsiri Flask. I get plenty from running Blood Rage. That does give 1.2% attack physical damage leeched as life, and as well as that, I get a little bit from my neck over here. But if you really want the sustain, the reliability, then you can spec into these and it will feel pretty decent. Then you can also get some mana leech there too. I try and not do that because it doesn't feel strictly necessary, like a bit of a waste, but you definitely can if you really want to for the consistency. And then it pretty much brings me to my last point, and that is about Leap Slam or Whirling Blades. I did play around with Whirling Blades for quite a while, and it's fine, it's pretty good, but ultimately I really enjoy the flexibility of being able to leap over the top of things, so I mostly use Leap Slam for my travel skill. You don't have to. Whirling Blades is fine, you definitely can do it. The links are Leap Slam, faster attacks, blood magic, and fortify, and my weapon is pretty basic as far as a weapon is concerned. Like I mentioned, you want physical damage and attack speed primarily, then try and get some crit and a bit more fizz if you really can. Most of your fizz damage is going to be coming from double strike because that shit's OP. So it's a pretty easy weapon, 240 DPS, and I can very comfortably clear everything up to tier 12 without even blinking an eye. And before I wrap this up, I suppose I should talk about the all-important microtransaction you're seeing in front of you. It's pretty much all from the new mystery boxes, I don't know what they're called, fucking Apocalypse mystery boxes. You get Wasteland set, you get the Automaton set, and this is the combined Apocalypse set for the most part. That's Apocalypse body armor, got a Celestial hood, and the Apocalypse wings, which are pretty large and pretty obnoxious, but they're kind of cool looking, and shit, why not use them? Can also use the Apocalypse cloak, which is just a little bit cleaner and smaller and aesthetic. But yeah, mystery boxes, you either hate them, you love them, but you're pretty much always gonna hate them. So careful gambling with those things. They're basically never worth it, but if you buy like 5 to 10 boxes, that's basically where they're going to give you the most value. You might get a few big items. You won't get too many duplicates, hopefully, in that range, and maybe get a bit of value out of it. But they're not the greatest practice to be involved in, are they? In any case, guys, this is Double Strike Duelist. It's been, or Champion, it's been pretty damn fun. I'm going to try and get another couple levels and get to the center of my atlas, maybe do some endgame bosses. I've been struggling on the red map drops. That's the biggest problem for me at the moment. We'll see if we can overcome that, because I really want to put this to the test in the endgame. But Blade Vortex and Arc still absolutely face rolling as well from what I've seen. You can pick those builds if you really want to get out there and smash some shit. That's it for me though, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.